When you first launch Smoke 2013, you'll receive the Smoke splash screen. On here you control such things as host computer, storage volume, projects, and users. In this video we'll take a quick look at how you create new projects. Under the project setting, if you had multiple projects available to you already, they would be accessible from a flyout. In this case we have no project created yet, so I will choose the New button and the Create New Project dialog box appears. The first thing we want to do is enter the name of the project. I'll name this project Discovering Europe. Then there's several settings that relate to the project setup, and by default you would create new setups with new projects. Just for reference, the setups are file-based resources such as the effects settings, the EDLs, and LUTs, and are managed in a set of subdirectories in the project setup directory. While you can share and copy from other projects, I'm going to leave this as a new setup. The config template will change depending upon the resolution that you set for the project. So let's jump down to our resolution settings. By default, you can see it reads 720 by 486 NTSC. Clicking on this list, you'll see a host of default setups you can choose, or a custom resolution if needed. I'll choose the 1920 by 1080 HD. Now below you'll see all the parameters are automatically set to match the standard settings for this format, meaning the aspect ratio, the bit depth, and the field or progressive option. Typically, you're going to want to choose a resolution that will match the final output of what your project will be. Always remember, you can mix resolutions and frame rates within Smoke with no problem whatsoever. When I chose this resolution, you'll notice that the config template above it had changed, as I just said a second ago. If the default config template is not what you need in your situation, just click on the list and you'll see a flyout with all the different possible config templates you can choose from. Choose the one that will work for your situation. This project configuration file primarily defines the display environment and again in no way is going to restrict you from working with different frame rates. You have the color bit depth you want to work in, and you also have the graphic bit depth you want to work in. The default is going to be set to 16-bit float for your graphics, and I'll recommend that you use 16-bit floating point for your graphics setup for 99% of your projects. Because as a rule, if you're working with mixed resolutions and some clips are higher than 8-bit, you should select the 16-bit floating point graphic display. Even if you're only working in 8-bit images, you will get better rendered results with the 16-bit floating graphic rendering with such things as transparencies, blending, and gradings that are part of your effect. The 16-bit floating graphic rendering produces a much better result than the 8-bit, but will take longer to process. Below that is the cache and rendered options. Here's where we can set what type of file format we want to use as our project intermediate files. These files are what Smoke generates and uses for renders of effects and stored local copies of files. Here you can choose what format you want to use. I'll leave it set to ProRes 422 HQ. Lastly, we have the proxy settings, and by default the proxies will be turned off. You have the option of turning proxies on, or you can set proxies to be conditional, where now, depending upon the width of the file, a proxy will be created. I'll set this to off for right now. So now I've got my project name ready, I've got my setup modes ready, my resolution, my proxy, and my cache render options. I choose Create. The project is now created and I'm ready to enter. Now I want to start my project, so I click the Start button and Smoke is going to launch. Once you are in the application, you can access, edit, delete, and create new projects. Going to the File menu, come down, you can see the option Project and User Settings. If I choose this, the Project and User Setting dialog box will open. If I want to edit an existing project, I make sure it is chosen in my list and choose the Edit button. And you'll see the Edit Project dialog box opens and all the project settings that I created at the splash screen are now available to be changed. You can also delete a project setup, or delete a project clips if wanted from this menu. Just remember, once you delete the project, it cannot be undone. I'll cancel this. If I want to create a new project, I choose New. This time I can name this project Smoke 2013. And in this case, I'll set it to be 720 HD. I'll leave everything else set to the default settings and choose Create. Now I have multiple projects that I can access from my flyout. And when I choose a new project, and when I'm ready to load that project, I click Load, and then Smoke will automatically save the existing project that was opened if any changes were made, and load the new project. Now I can start working in this new project that I just switched to.